Well, hello out there. I appreciate you listening and tuning in to the Bandwidth Tapes. My name is Brad Williams, and this is the first episode. I'm pretty excited about it. Slightly terrified, but also very excited about it. The idea of this has been a long time coming, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. So, again, I really appreciate you taking the time to have a listen. The way this is all going to work is that I'm going to spend some time interviewing and having some conversation with some of my dearest friends who happen to be my musical heroes. And we're just going to sit and talk about their journey in life, how it all started for them as a human and then as a musician. And we'll also find some way to talk about how our lives intersected with each other and some cool stuff we've done along the way. And I just hope you have a good time listening. As I'm recording this, it's a cold and rainy day in St. Louis, Missouri, and feels like winter, which is A-okay for me. We just finished Thanksgiving last week, and my mom is in town visiting. We have had a great time with her. Skylar came up from LSU, and it was just so much fun for all of us to spend some time together. We spent a lot of time together laughing, having way too much food, watching some movies, and just spending a lot of time together. It was so much fun. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday as well. So as I kick off this first episode, it's my pleasure to interview my buddy, Mr. Mark Mundy. Mark is one of my dearest, best friends in the world, and I love him to death. He also happens to be one of the best musicians I've ever worked with. He's an incredible guitar player, a great singer, producer, engineer. We met years ago and played a lot of gigs together, mostly in the band Across the Wide that I was fortunate enough to be in with him when we lived in Atlanta. Mark also owns and operates Flossy Monk Studios out of his home. It's a great sounding studio with an amazing vibe, and it's just so easy to be creative in there. We recorded 2 Across the Wide albums in his studio, and have done a lot of other projects for other people. So make sure you check out Flossy Monk Studios and all the great things that are coming out of it. So without further ado, here is my conversation with my pal, Mr. Mark Mundy. Well, hello, Mark Mundy.
Hello. How are you?
This is awesome. Looking forward to having some time talking about you and music and all that fun stuff, about all the crazy gigs we've played together over the years. So
we've done a few.
So yeah, I was just wanting to kind of find out where all this started for you. Were you born in Georgia?
Yeah, I was born. I still live in the town I was born in, Cumming, Georgia. I still have a lot of family around here, dating all the way back to, of course, a lot of them are gone now, but, back to the 1800s that I know of. We all came from right around here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm similar story. My family's from down the road in Alpharetta. That's where most of my mom's family's from, and so yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I like having everybody close by for the most part. I think when I was younger, I wanted to sow some wild oats and move away and do different things, but this is what I know. This is where my family is, so it's home.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah, that's it. Well, so you have a brother, Matt.
I do. Mm-hmm.
Is Matt older or younger than you?
He's older than me by just over a couple of years.
Okay. And y'all are, as far as I'm concerned, y'all are like music royalty in Cumming, Georgia. You and your brother and your mom, and tell everybody who your mom is and what all she's done.
Well, my mother is Frances Mooney now. Of course, she's remarried, and she started playing music probably when she was, maybe a teenager. Around, she was born, it's probably in the mid to late 60s. She started playing guitar and then eventually picked up bass and has been playing bluegrass ever since. Had several different iterations of bands and still plays with some of the people she started with. And my brother and I have been in her band for a while and are different times throughout the years, playing bluegrass and doing festivals and stuff like that. And she's gotten, I think she probably would have done more with it if she was just a single person out in the world, or whatever. But she was definitely a present mother. She avoided a lot of travel to raise me and my brother and have more of a stable family life, which we certainly appreciate. But she did gain some traction and has done a lot of projects, including the Daughters of Bluegrass, which has won some international bluegrass music awards. Then her mom and her dad, my grandma and grandpa on her side, they both played music, and that's sort of where the music came from. Was my grandmother's father, my great grandfather, was a fiddle player and fiddle maker. He repaired instruments for a lot of people in this area back, like I said, dating back to the turn of the century. So last century.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
yeah, that's about as far back as I know that it goes. As he was, kind of a just a local musician and luthier for other musicians.
Yeah. I'm sure that your situation was a lot like mine in that, growing up, every time people got together, there was music.
Oh
And
yeah,
people sat around and played music. Not until I was around other families, I didn't know that wasn't just what everybody did. But
yeah,
that's what our families did. I know that's what yours
yeah,
did. You know,
yeah.
everybody would have a meal, would hang out, and then guitars would come out, and everybody would sit around and play and sing songs together
We
until
didn't
the
do
wee hours of the morning.
charades.
No,
There
no,
was no. We didn't do charades or scavenger hunts. We
right.
played. We played music.
I'm convinced that those games are built for families that don't know how to play music.
Must be. It must be.
Oh, that's great. And then your brother plays.
Hmm.
I think I knew about. I had heard about Matt years ago before I had ever met you. Because
Hmm.
because Matt he's had quite a good career as a musician.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. He started playing maybe probably in conjunction with our age. He started playing a couple of years before I did, and he started playing the fiddle, and that's a pretty tough instrument, as we all
Mm-hmm.
who've ever tried know. But he quickly, figured out that the mandolin was tuned the same way, and he could use some of the same shapes and play that. So, and that's where, obviously where his ability took off was playing the mandolin and studying the greats, Bill Monroe, and more newer, or at that time newer, sort of jazzier players like Sam Bush and David Grisman and stuff like that. And he just got really good really fast, and he was playing mandolin in bands at festivals and different places by the time he was 15, maybe 15, 16
Wow.
years old. And then in the 90s, we were playing in a sort of an acoustic instrumental band with friends of ours, Scott Vestal and Jeff Autry, and
Yeah.
we went and had the opportunity to open up at the Point in Little Five Points, which is no longer there. I think it's a blue jean store or something now for the kids. But it was a cool little local spot, small, maybe held 200 people packed in there. But they would play there. They had like a residency
Okay.
Mondays or Tuesdays or something like that, and they had us open up for them one night. Um, and Matt met Bruce Hampton and the Aquarium Rescue Unit, and that's where he took off with
Wow.
them. So that sort of opened the doors for him to do a lot of things I don't think he would have done just playing local festivals and stuff. That certainly
Yeah.
opened it up.
Did Bruce guess your birthday?
I think he definitely guessed my sign. I'm not sure if he
Yeah.
got the day just right. Maybe within a couple of tries.
Thanks to the world of that we are in now on the internet with YouTube, and you can go and find some of those videos of ARU with Matt playing with
Hmm.
Jimmy Herring and Jeff
Oh
and
yeah.
O'Teal. It's like another world of
Mhm.
playing when those guys were together. It was just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I mean, I can remember. I remember that first night. Seeing them and just being like, what even is this? Is
Yeah.
this real life?
Yeah.
Because and this was before Jimmy Herring was with them. This was with Jeff Sipe on drums, Bruce, of course, a guy named Charlie Williams playing guitar, great guitar player, more jazz oriented, clean guitar tone.
Yeah.
And O'Teal, of course, Matt, and then the Larry Jones, the Count and Butu
Yes.
playing percussion. So it was like six people on this small stage in the middle of Little Five Points, and 200 people just packed in there. And like I said, we got to open up, and they asked Matt to sit in with them because they really were enamored with that instrument.
Yeah.
And so he did, and yeah, he was playing with them full time within a couple of
That's
months.
crazy. I think the first time I ever heard of Matt's name was reading the liner notes on the first Tales from the Acoustic Planet album,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Bela Fleck record.
yeah, and that's a door that certainly got open because we also. I'm not sure. It's been so. I mean, think about it, that was like 1991,
Yeah,
so
I know.
it's been a while. But it seems like we either went and saw, or maybe we were the opening act of that same group of guys for the Newgrass Revival
Oh
at
wow.
at the Point. I do remember seeing them there, but I don't remember if we were the sporting act that night or not, or maybe we just went there. But I had never been to the Point, had no idea that was even a place before that night with Bruce and them.
Yeah,
But that's when we went there. So it's kind of funny, like both of those things, and then they both came to pass in Matt's life as far as
yeah. I and
getting to play with Bela as
Yeah.
well.
I would be remiss if I didn't get ask you to share the story of you guys going to see Chris Thiele and you guys going about Matt, you guys going backstage
Yeah,
and meeting Chris. That's just such a cool story.
yeah. We went to Smith's Old Bar, another local uh, music bar there in Atlanta, and went with my wife Terry, her sister Tina, and my brother Matt. And we went down there, and this is many years later, just a few years ago, and we went to see Chris Thiele and Michael Daves. They had like a duo album. It was an amazing show. One microphone and two monsters standing around it, just
Hmm.
just wearing it out. Anyway, so my wife had a few glasses of wine and was feeling adventurous, and she slipped a note to the guy who was sort of guarding the backstage. She slipped a note to him that just simply said, Matt Mundy is here and would like to meet you. And my brother had nothing to do with it. I didn't know she had done it. So anyway, I guess he told her he'd get it to him, and he did, because they came back out there and said, "Yeah, you four can come with us." And we went backstage and met with him. Of course, anybody that knows Chris or has followed his career knows that he uh, used his, I forget, was it some prize that he won, where the purse was like $500,000. Well, he used that money to buy a Lloyd Loar Gibson mandolin.
Wow.
And Matt knew about that, and of course Matt's like, "Oh yeah, it's nice to meet you. But tell me more about that mandolin." So they got to talking about it, and he just picked it up and handed it to Matt and let Matt hit a few chords on it, and it was just it was real cool to see uh, the influence that Matt had on him as a younger player. Of
Sure.
course, he's pretty much the top of the mandolin heap these days, and he basically told Matt that his work on Bela's Tales from the Acoustic Planet album sort of changed his outlook on what was possible on the
Wow.
mandolin. As just going from coming from a traditional background
Yeah.
playing.
Well, and that's really it. You talked about Sam Bush having that influence on Matt, and then Matt
Mm-hmm.
goes and does the same thing for
Yeah.
Chris, and who knows how many other people. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I just
crazy.
remember hearing, like, when we were younger, you see a band like David Grisman Quartet, Quintet, or the albums he did with Tony Rice and all those other players. And there was a group of guys, or two guys that were on every album. Daryl Anger and I forget the other guy's name. But these two guys, and it'd be like, look at the liner notes, it would be David Grissom and mandolin. This guy, mandola. This guy, the octave mandolin. And they would be doing these trios. And it's like, you see those guys, and they're not super famous guys. But what they were doing was amazing. And then I'm sure, like Matt is not super famous, say, in Arizona or New York or somewhere like that. But what he did, people that paid attention to the
Right.
stuff that the bigger guys were putting out can see these names that aren't necessarily household names, but they certainly can have an influence on the
Yeah,
way you
absolutely.
take your instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were saying that, I was remembering the fact that I think one of the things that I miss with technology is having that opportunity to read those liner notes and just kind of
Oh yeah.
look at the web of all these players that played on this album and then this album. And yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's amazing
Mike
how
Marshall was the
Mike
other guy's
Marshall.
name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
ahead.
Great
When
player.
I'm sure he'll hear this and just
Yeah.
his feelings hurt.
Apologies to him. So,
Name
well,
that. Name the episode that. Apologies to Mike Marshall.
you got it. Golden Eagle winner, Mike Marshall.
Yeah.
Uh, so, so let's go back. So, how old were you when you started playing?
I mean, it sort of just happened naturally. It was
Yeah.
always around, but I would say somewhere between 5 and 8, I started just picking up an instrument here and there, and just kind of messing around with it. And I was left-handed for the most part, but there were no left-handed instruments, so I struggled with that for a while. But Mom always had musicians over to the house. She always had a band, even though they may not be traveling the country or working full time. She always had a band, and even to this day, like weekly practices are a common thing with her. Even if I think her banjo player drives 2 hours to come here and rehearse
Wow.
on Wednesday nights.
Wow.
So it's it just finding people like that who really love and enjoy making music enough to
Yeah.
put some effort into it. But she, there were always people around. Like if you caught them in the right mood, of course, you were just a little shit running around. Maybe annoying them for the most part. But every once in a while you catch them in a good mood, and they show you a chord or teach you a little something, and that's how it started with me. But I would say around maybe 1979 or early 80
Yeah.
is when I started getting my own instruments. So maybe around eight or
Yeah.
9 years old.
Was it always at that point? Were you kind of it was bluegrass flat picking? Was that kind of the
Yeah,
direction you
yeah. I
were
mean,
going at that point?
my mom definitely had. She loved country music. I mean,
Mm.
I just some off the top of my head. I remember Gatlin Brothers albums. I remember Earl Thomas Conley albums. I remember the Urban Cowboy soundtrack and things like that. But yeah, it was, as far as the music that I had the opportunity to learn how to play from other people, it was bluegrass.
Yeah.
Later on, when I was able to learn things on my own and use, as people say, learn by ear, than whatever records were available or things that I could hear on the radio and
Sure.
capture on a cassette tape or something.
Yeah, I can imagine the equal parts Tony Rice and Eddie Van Halen at some point in your life. I mean,
That would probably be where I would like to hear my. I'd like for people to say, you know what he sounds like. Yeah, I don't know that they do, but that would be something I would want to hear for sure.
Well, I say that because I think I do hear that. I mean, it's great to hear someone that plays well, that you can hear them being themselves, but you can hear little pieces that they've taken from
Yeah.
everyone that they've studied over the years. And,
Yeah, I'm under no illusion that I'm a sum of all the things I've listened to, things that have moved me through the years.
sure.
I hear some people say, and I try not to sound like anybody else. Well, you're
Yeah.
going to, and you're going to. I mean, you don't just sit in a white room with a guitar and learn how to play. You got to hear it from somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
What's
yeah,
that old saying that bad composers borrow and great composers steal? I mean, that's
yeah,
really it. I mean,
yeah.
it's okay to rip something off. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's going to become your sound, and
Well, the Bare Naked Ladies said it best. It's all been done.
that's
It's all been done.
I feel like every 5 minutes we have a new title for this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So where'd you go to elementary school in Forsyth County?
I went. Well, my mother. We moved a few times. I started elementary school at Sawney, which
Okay.
I live maybe a mile and a quarter from right now. The Sawney Elementary School, which is at the foot of Sawney Mountain, which
Yeah.
we call a mountain here in Cumming. And then I spent a year or two at Canton Elementary.
Yep.
Also, that was third, actually. My third grade, I went to Cumming Elementary.
Okay.
So, and I like to think of all these school changes as just new opportunities.
That's really what it is.
I'm still, as you know, I've still got the same friends I had in high school, and a lot of those are from different schools that I went to.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
luckily back then when I went to high school here, all the middle schools and elementary schools and every school in Forsyth County came together at one high school. So everybody that I had met, around here through the years, they all came back together there.
So, and I know at some point we'll talk about your work over many years with Jody, but I wanted to talk through high school and then maybe talk a little bit after you were in high school. What were you playing? Were you playing a lot in bands at that point? Did you start doing stuff?
Well, in high school, I couldn't tell you about that without mentioning Jody, because we met in junior high school, and I would say that's the first. I had another friend, Shannon. Are you familiar with Bobby Carmichael?
I think that name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Bobby's a songwriter. He spent most of his adult years in Nashville as a part of probably, just guessing, probably a few different troops of writers, and then commuted back and forth from here to there. His son Shannon and I knew each other well because Bobby and my mother were friends, musician friends, and Shannon and I, we learned some Boston intros, some Leonard Skinner intros, and things like that, because we both, had an interest in playing guitar. And that's what you did. You learned some Leonard Skinner. And then, so that was my first That was my first experiences outside of bluegrass and acoustic guitar, was learning that kind of stuff. And then when my mom married my stepdad Ron, I moved from this side of town to the north side of town and went to North Forsyth Junior High School, and that's where I met Jody.
Okay.
And we figured out pretty quickly that we were both musicians with musician parents, and we would get together, him playing keyboard, me playing guitar, and it was just little things like that. I don't think I ever made any money playing music until, like maybe 17, 18
Yeah.
years old, somewhere in there.
Okay. So after high school, you went in the Army,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Happy Veterans Day, by the way. It's
thank you.
today. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't really feel like a hero, but I guess I am
Well,
one.
you are to me.
Yeah. So just sort of tying it all together, in high school, joining the Army was after Matt was still playing with Bruce Hampton when I joined the Army. That was in 1990. And so 1988, 89, I was already playing out in some bars. Even as a young man, if you worked there, you could be younger. And so,
Yeah.
it was kind of cool coming to school Monday morning with an extra $100, just,
Sure.
especially if it was pizza day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I joined the Army. I wouldn't say out of any other reason than I really didn't feel like I was living up to my potential around here. Music hadn't really, even though I loved playing guitar and I certainly never wanted to stop doing that, I didn't look at it as a possible career at that time. And I had a couple of buddies that were in the Army, and this is during Desert Storm, George Bush Sr. And during, just to give you an idea of when that was. And so I felt like, I could join the Army, I would have a job. I feel like I was doing something, as opposed to
Sure.
just sitting around. And, I didn't stay in long. I think I stayed in 3 years of a 4-year commitment. And it opened my eyes a bit to, I didn't want to do that the rest of my life.
Sure. No, that.
So, and I had a guitar when I was in Louisiana at my permanent duty station. I had a guitar with me and an amp in the room, and I would play for all the buddies and stuff. And even the first sergeant was a really tall, commanding personality, funny. He was a black man. He really reminded me of Morgan Freeman in the way he talked. He was from Georgia, so we had that in common. But he was all military. Like we weren't friends,
Yeah.
but he did. He knew that I could play, and he even came by and requested some songs, and we got to talking. And one day he just told me, he's like, this sounds like what you want to be doing with your life. He's like, you have an amazing opportunity right now because the war's over. We got no money. They're taking all the training away. He said, you can be out of here in 2 weeks if you want to be. And I really felt like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was making any, I wasn't really helping out there much. And I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. And there was a lot of people that did. And some of those guys, especially with Facebook, I've come in touch with lately, and
Really.
they're retired, with full benefits and everything at 50 years old. So, but yeah, that was the end of that. That was around 93, I think.
Okay.
So
And then
that's when I got out of the Army.
So you got out of the Army, and then you moved back to Georgia.
I did. I moved back in with my mom and stepdad here in Cumming, and just seemed like music just sort of took over. That
Yeah.
was the, you think about where we were in popular culture at the time. That was the down in the grunge, the early '90s rock music, Soundgarden, uh, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, that
Yeah.
whole group of bands just exploded. And I really felt like, coming out of the '80s, growing up and coming of age in the '80s, and the excess and the makeup and the big hair. And I mean, I still love some of that music. There's no doubt. I'll never get over some of the songs that I was a big fan of at that time. But when grunge came along, it sort of brought this edge with it of authenticity. It
Yeah.
felt like, it wasn't about selling records anymore, although they sold plenty. I'm sure they're all doing fine.
Doing just fine. But yeah, it feels like that entire just crossroad, and it was a reaction of everything that had just been happening before it,
Yeah.
whether it be 80s the hair metal or the boy bands that were there, and yeah, it
Yeah.
all just feels like a reaction to what was going on before it.
So I tried my hand at it, doing some rock songs, and I had a few bands, nothing of note, but worked with a lot of people. Like I said, I'm still friends with, and we tried our hand at some grunge or hard rock, or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. But really, when it all boiled down, it was just more about just being who you were, not putting on a face, or literally with the hair bands and stuff, not putting on a costume to make your music. Just write songs and play them.
Yeah, that's it. I'm trying, I'm trying to think of a way to describe the way the music scene is now, and I feel like it's a little bit of both of those now. That
Hmm.
you
I think where we're at, it may have been a comedian, and may have been somebody talking about, like, if you look at a sitcom in the '80s, you
Mhm.
can tell that it was made in the '80s. If you look at a sitcom from the '50s or '60s, or if you look at as long as it wasn't a period piece, you can sort of tell by the hairstyles, by the way they dress, when it is. But if you look at something from the last 10 years, it could have been made yesterday or 10 years ago, or
Yeah, no,
15 years. It's like everybody is just being yourself and doing what you want with your art or whatever, is that it's more popular than ever just to be who you are, and
yeah.
it's okay.
Well,
So,
I remember. I mean, we were having this conversation sometime not too long ago. I think when we were in Bristol, that the easy commentary is to say that there's no good music anymore, and and that is just that's just not true. You just
no.
may have to look harder for it. But
Yeah.
great music is still being made, and people are being artistic, and there's great songwriting, there's great playing. I would say that the production now is with people like Dave Cobb. Production is as good as it's ever been. You
Yeah.
just have to seek it out. You just have to look for it.
Yeah. Quit expecting them to hand it to you.
Yeah.
You turn on, and I think, just like with a home telephone, or other antiquated things like that, I think popular radio is going that way too. I mean, I don't. Most of the people that I know that listen to AM/FM radio anymore are listening to talk radio channels,
Right.
or
Yeah.
if they're lucky enough to have a public station nearby that they can listen to get their news, or even some classical music, or something like we have here, the Georgia State
Oh
Album
man,
88.
album 88. Yeah.
You got the opportunity to hear some stuff that you've never heard before. But otherwise, if you're listening to popular radio, you're not going to get real country. You're
No.
not going to get real rock and roll, but it is out there. If you just, all you have, I think probably why we talked about it in Bristol is because we were at the perfect festival for that kind of thing. Real authentic artists
Yeah.
making music and being
Yeah.
able to recreate it on the stage right in
That's
front
it.
of you.
It's real music made by real people for real
Yeah,
people. That's what it felt
yeah,
like. It
yeah.
was just unbelievable experience getting to hear
Hmm.
just all those great players and singers. It was
Yeah,
unbelievable.
definitely.
So so I know you played at some point. You played with the Urban Shake Dancers, right? Did you?
Hmm.
How long were
It
you
wasn't a
there?
very long period of time. I think maybe a year is all I played with them. Uh, it was. I'm trying to put the chronology together, but I think that was somewhere around 95,
Okay.
96. Uh, when I got back from the army, like I said, I was sort of floating around. I'd stay with some friends in Athens, stay with some friends in Atlanta. I'd stay with my parents. I don't even think I was paying rent anywhere, which I'm sure they loved that. But there I was, and so when I got a phone call from Bruce Hampton, and or maybe he had called and left a message at Mom's and told me that he needed to talk to me. So I called him back, and he said, "I know you play guitar. Would you be interested in playing bass?" And I said, "Sure." And so he said, "All good out of Athens was looking for a bass player." So I got in touch with those guys, Corky and Clay Fuller, and their singer Corky, and went and met with them. And what it was is they had decided to end that band's career. They were done. They were going to hang it up and get day jobs or whatever. And they had about 4 or 5 months worth of gigs left to play, and their bass player wasn't interested in doing them. So I did that. I
Okay.
helped them out, and during that was fun because they played decent sized venues, I mean, and they were popular everywhere they went. I don't understand why they were giving it up, but I guess, having had that same feeling through the years now, it doesn't matter if something's popular or not. Sometimes your heart just sitting there. So that went off without a hitch, and we did several shows, including the Music Farm in Charleston, South Carolina. And there, our opener, both times we played there, was the Urban Shake Dancers.
Wow.
So I kind of got to know those guys a little bit in passing through that. And when that one of those nights, maybe in Charleston, I'm pretty sure one of those nights, the guys in All Good said, we got a surprise. We're gonna let Mark play guitar. So I got up and I played a couple of songs with them on guitar, and Clay played bass. And when Robert and them with the Urban Shake Dancers, when they lost their guitar player, they remembered that, and they got in touch with me and said, "Would you want to come down and meet everybody and possibly audition?" So I went to their rehearsal space and auditioned with them and got the gig.
Oh, that's crazy.
So and
Yeah.
we did that allowed me the opportunity to. I did my first two times tours of Colorado,
Oh, cool.
which was amazing. And I think that's probably the highlight of playing in that band was doing those two tours out there.
Sure. Absolutely. That's crazy. And our great mutual friend Brooks Smith, it had to
Hmm.
have been around the time he was playing with the Grapes. It had to have
Oh
been.
yeah. Now I didn't know him. I think my focus was always on their band leader Ted,
Yep, absolutely.
because he had this huge pedal board. I had never seen anything like it. I think it even had a nickname, the Mothership. And it feels like, in my memory, of course, it may be like the first time you see the state capitol or something. It's just this huge thing. But in my memory, it was like 100 pedals. It's just crazy. It just surrounded him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have an opportunity to meet many of those guys. I wish I had known Brooks back then.
Yeah. I didn't know Brooks back then, and I just can't even imagine what Brooks was like back then. I bet he was
A
just a whole
younger
lot of fun.
version of that,
Yeah, that with more energy. I don't know if that's possible.
less inhibition.
Yeah, man, he's one of the funniest people in the world. So let's talk about you playing music with Jody.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell everybody that you and Jody are the Lennon and McCartney of Cumming, Georgia. That's
Yeah.
that's what you guys you are to me. I know you guys are that to a lot of people. Just great songwriting, great execution of it. It's just great, and we'll talk about some time, our time getting to play all that stuff together. But walk me through that, what you guys were playing when you first started, and the iterations of Stepsister to the Internationals to Across the Wide
Yeah.
and beyond.
Well, like I said earlier, my mother remarried my stepdad Ron in around 85. I'm just kind of guessing, but somewhere around there. Well, they may have got together. I think in 1986 is when we moved to the north end of Cumming, which is where I moved schools. I moved from middle school called Otwell. I was in the 8th grade, and I moved out to North Forsyth. And North Forsyth, North Forsyth in general, at that time, and even still, in a lot of cases, was more rural, more farms, more, more hunt, guys that like to go hunting and stuff like that. I was not that at all. I had a mullet. Was working real hard on my mullet, and I had earrings. And I moved out there, and it was rat turd in a sugar bowl. I think is what my grandfather told me it was like. Anyway, so I was very lucky to have been alive at the same time and still alive with a fellow named Wayne Minshew, because when I first got there in the offices, talking to the counselor and the principal and meeting everybody up there. When I was leaving there to go to my first cut, because I moved there in the middle of the year. It wasn't like the first day of school, everybody's there, everybody's nervous. It was just me,
Right.
So I went to the office, and they got on the intercom and called Wayne Minshew to the office. So he came in there, and they had him take me to my classes that day, like sort of be an ambassador for me for that school. And he carried my books, and so he and I were quickly. I mean, you've met Wayne.
Oh,
very easy to get along with.
Easy to get along with. One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Yeah.
And he was already and had already been friends with Jody since they were little kids. They met very young. And so the first day I met Jody, I met another good friend, musician, Mark Millwood. and many other people that I still remember, and thanks to still living here, I see every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I met Jody, and it wasn't long before, when you first hanging out, like we were just kids. The music wasn't the first thing we brought up. It was more, what's on TV or anything. And then once we started talking about music, it seemed like it was pretty quick that we both learned our parents were involved in music. His dad and my mom were both working musicians. And so that sort of started us talking about music. And then, well, what do you play? Well, I play this. Well, what do you play? I play that. What kind of music you like? And it just kept growing from there. And probably within, a couple of months, we were visiting each other at each other's houses and, maybe playing a little bit of music or going to the swimming pool. And then it just, as we grew up, it just sort of became a bigger part of our friendship and
Yeah.
relationship. It didn't start out that way. We were just kids, being kids, getting to know each other. But, it just sort of kept coming up. And by the time we were in, a few years later, when we were getting ready to graduate high school, we were playing local bar and restaurants, for $400 or $500 a night.
Wow.
Us two and a couple of other musicians.
Isn't that great? Now, all these years later,
Mm-hmm.
that's still what these places pay their bands. How great.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so
Mm-hmm.
you guys was Stepsister for the first band, if you want to call it a band?
It was Stepdaughter, and no, that was
Stepdaughter,
just
that's right,
one. Yeah,
stepdaughter.
that was one of the uh, thousand. You and any other person that's ever tried to start a band or anything knows the process of naming a band is it's terrible. Nobody likes doing it. It ends up being joke after joke after joke. I think our first band was I'm not 100% sure, but I know after I got out of the Army and came back home, and we started after All Good, because Jody and I, we had that little band in high school, and it seems like that band's name was Try Again or something silly. Probably, like I say, it, you get a list of 10,000 possibilities, and you're just like, I'm tired of doing this. Let's just use that one. And that's what we did with that. But we did that for a while, and then we went our separate ways. And I joined the Army. I got out of the Army. I played with All Good. I played with the Urban Shake Dancers, and then Jody and I got back together, and we started playing music with some other friends of ours. A drummer I met in All Good. He had hooked up with a bass player and another guitar player out of Athens, and they were playing as a trio. And then me and Jody slipped in with them and started playing more, adding to the songs that they had written. Then that bass player quit. My good buddy, Jody's good buddy, Mark Millwood, joined as a bass player, and then we had a band called The Fred Reese, and we released an album. And it's more. This was when Mark Millwood was working in school at Georgia State for music, so we got to use the Georgia State's state of the art ADAT machines and Yamaha consoles and all the
Nice.
stuff. At the
Yes.
time, that was the tip of the spear there. But
Sure.
so and during all that, Jody and I, of course, lifelong friends. We just kept getting together and writing our own stuff too, and that's sort of where a band called the
Mhm.
Hooplas was born out of that. And then
Oh,
the
yeah,
Hooplas
that's
turned
right.
into Stepdaughter, and then that turned into the Internationals, and then from the Internationals to Across the Wide.
Got it. So, was country music going through all of
Yeah,
these,
I
or did
mean,
it?
when in the Hooplas, I'll use that as the example because that's when we really embraced the idea of being a band that would go and play a mixture of covers and originals and play at bars and restaurants. You couldn't just go into, a bar and a
Hmm.
restaurant and play for 3 hours and do all original music. So we had to we took on some covers, and we were doing a lot of rock stuff when we were a little younger. But even doing an Ozzy song or a Kiss song, and listen to how I talk. Everything that I sing is going to sound country, or at least it's going to sound like country does rock. It's not. It's just that I am who I am, and Jody has just as big of an accent as I do. He likes to joke when people ask him where he's from. He says France, but yeah, he's got as much of a southern accent and draw as I do. So it was more or less more us just embracing that and not fighting it. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been in the band, you've been on both of our albums, and there's certain songs on there that are not really country at all. But
Yeah.
for the most part, it's just about writing what you feel and what you feel comfortable writing, and that's the way those songs uh, manifested with country.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, there's some of the. I mean, you can really hear all the different influences, all the different things that you guys have picked up along the way in those songs. You'll hear
Mm.
Buck Owens in it, or you'll hear Graham Parsons, or you'll hear the Rolling Stones in it, or you'll hear that West Coast production of, of
Oh yeah.
the Wrecking Crew, that kind of thing.
Mm.
You hear that in those songs, and it's just that's what's I've always it's just been so amazing to witness it, is just to hear what you guys have collectively brought in your writing. It's pretty fantastic. So I really like it. Um, well, I'd be, I we can't talk about this story without bringing up our
Mm-hmm.
buddy Darren Shirley, right? Because without Darren Shirley, you and I, we I'm going to say that we would still be sitting here having this conversation, because
Somehow,
we
yeah.
would have met somewhere along the way. But thankful to my uncle Darren, your friend Darren, that
Yeah.
he joined us together, who we lost
Has it been that
almost a
long?
year ago.
Wow.
He left us. Yeah, it's hard to
Yeah, I
believe.
think
So,
him. You hear
um,
so many people in being a musician and being lucky enough to be the ones on the stage. Uh, I say that with a grain of salt. Sometimes you'd rather be somewhere else. It's just according to where the gig is or what you're doing and what's going on in your life. But being lucky enough to be up there, you get a lot of people who think they're like, I know somebody that plays guitar, or my cousin's a singer. Yeah,
how many times
yeah,
I mean, how many times have you
yeah.
heard that? I know how many times
There
I've
was
heard it.
something
Yeah.
about the way Darren said it that it didn't come across as him bragging about himself. He really was genuinely bragging that just that he felt proud that you were as good as you were, and he wanted you to know it, but he wasn't going to push it on you. He wasn't going to say, no, you got to hear this, you got to do it, watch this, do this. Most people are like, check this out. I think me and you talked about that night in the parking lot, which we can bring up, but you get that so many times.
Yeah.
People want to push something in your face, but he was so had such humility about wanting me to hear you, but not wanting to come across as that guy that you see so often in a bar.
Yeah. That's it. Well, and he was the same way with me. And, he's like,
Yeah,
listen,
we did. We
because y'all
worked
work
at
together, right?
an irrigation supply house.
Yeah. And he's like, listen, this guy I work with, he can play. He can play, and I understand exactly what you're saying, because Darren wouldn't say that to me
Yeah.
unless he believed it. And he would reserve moments
Right.
like that for
Exactly.
when it really mattered, and I think he just knew something. And so I think the first time we met, I was playing with
Mm-hmm.
another band, and you were there
Mm-hmm.
that night and sat in with
Yeah.
us.
And I don't even know
And
that I knew it was you until, yeah,
really,
I knew Jeremy well enough. Jeremy, Southern accent. I knew him well enough, and he knew me well enough that he invited me up to play. And where I think I grabbed his acoustic guitar, and where I ended up standing was right next to you. And him not being knowing classic country, as well as somebody else, he turned the floor over to you and said, "Well, why don't you sing something and y'all can
mm-hmm,
play that?" And then you sang "Working Man Blues." That's the first song we ever played.
Working Man Blues, yeah.
And
His
I was
first song
standing
we
by
ever
you, and
played,
I
yeah.
just
And
remember
I
thinking, I think Darren said he played with Jeremy. I guess was that him. I think that was him. And yeah, it was just like it wasn't like, oh, okay, I'm going up here and I'm going to be playing next to Brad Williams, who is Darren's nephew, and I did not put any of that together. It
right,
just, I was there you were, and I was like,
yeah,
that's who that is.
that's it. Well, and then, and I don't even know if you remember this, but I think it was one Sunday afternoon. Lisa and I were out, and we were going to stop by and just have a drink and have a little time
I
with the
do
two of us. And
remember
we stopped by
that.
Good Old Days, and you and Jody had just finished, and we talked on your way out, and Lisa and I sat down. I was like,
Yeah.
I played with him a few weeks ago, and I'd
Yeah.
really like to play
It
with him
wasn't
some
it wasn't long after
more.
that. I think we got together at my mom and stepdad's little music store we had. Me and you and Jody got together and did a few songs. I remember those songs too. I
Yeah,
think Mama Tried
we
was
did
the
Mama
first one we
Tried,
did
didn't we?
together. I think we did the
Hmm.
another Merle Haggard song. I think we did Makeup and Faded Blue Jeans that day.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. And it was one of those things, I'll just say this from my point of view. It was like going back to a
Hmm.
place of comfort.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the way it felt from the first moment. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
we
like,
just sang
what?
those
And I know
simple
we've said
harmony
this before.
parts. It made having you sing that high part, because I mean I would do that too. I would sing the high part, and I know the notes I'm supposed to sing, but my voice isn't up there. It doesn't hit those notes comfortably. So to
Mhm.
have you there and me be able to sing that lower part, it was just like, yeah, where has this been? This is great.
Yeah, it was great. And it was like, I thought so many times over the years, like, how in the world did it take us as long as it did
Yeah.
to run into each other,
Well, I think
you
things
know?
happen for a
And then
reason,
after that, I mean, it was just,
I've definitely had my ups
yeah,
and downs through the
that's it.
years, and it's just like,
Me too.
if we'd have met before, who knows, where our brains would have been. Could have been a disaster.
Yeah, no, I
May
get it.
still be.
It could have been. That's it.
They're
Look,
still
the
young.
day's still young, man. Who knows? So yeah, so we played a lot of
Hmm.
gigs with a bunch of different people. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned. I would say I've improved a lot as a musician ever since
Same
I've
here.
gotten to work with you.
And I've
You,
also learned,
you.
not to just talking about just what we've done together, but the I've learned through playing with you that something that I didn't have before, I don't feel like I had before. I mean, I know I'm good, I mean, I'm not to sound conceited about it, but I know I'm pretty good. You know, I've been playing most of my life, but the confidence has just never really been there for me as far as like feeling like I can do anything. But you know, very quickly you invited me to play with different bands that you were with, and I would work myself to death trying to learn these songs or whatever. But really, more than that, just kind of know the song and then get up there and do it. Just don't worry about it. Just have
That's
fun
it.
and do it. You're just playing music. Just have fun with it. Don't, you know.
That's it. Golly. Yeah. I mean, how many times do you think in your life you've gotten in your own way
Oh
as a
yeah,
musician? I mean, I
definitely. It's
know. Good
and
grief.
you know most of the time you
I,
get with a new band or something, and you know you get a list of songs, and you know I've heard all those songs, so really I already half the battle's already won. I already have heard the song. I know how
yeah,
the melody goes, and that's what people are there to hear, not whether you hit
that's
that
it.
note just right or anything. It's just having that feeling,
That's
that
it.
somebody knows the song and they're giving it to you in their own way.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, it's about, for me, it's just, I got to
Mm-hmm.
just trust myself in it
Yeah.
in that moment. That's really it. So, yeah, no, it's good. And not only have you just are you just an amazing musician, great player, great singer, great songwriter, but now you've got this just thriving
Mm-hmm.
recording studio at your house where we've recorded together, and you've recorded some great projects, some award-winning projects for people now. You know, tell me a little bit about how that all started, and what it's looking like
Well,
these
starting
days.
out, just like with most things in my life, it never was something that I set out to do. It's just something that was always been a little bit of a necessity, from learning how to play in junior high and high school. It was, two cassette players. You record yourself on one cassette, then
Hmm.
play that, and then play along with that and record that to a second cassette, and then go back and forth and try to add the parts. Then you graduate to a 4-track recorder, which essentially is taking a cassette tape and splitting it into four sections. Then I think Jody, sometime around 11th or 12th grade, his dad was going to get involved in doing some voiceover work. And to do that, he needed to be able to record stuff at home. So he got a TAC 8-track reel to reel. So then we had 8 tracks. And of course, if
Oh,
you're gonna
yes.
mic a whole drum kit and get a drum beat down there, then you've already used up 6 tracks of that. So then you got to learn how to bounce those things down to 2 tracks, and then it was just a
Hmm.
constant learning through the years of how to manipulate different things and get things on what my wife would call on a shoestring. We don't have the money to have everything we want, but we figure out a way to make it work with what we can afford. And
Yeah.
then my mom got, this was probably in somewhere around 2000. My mom got a 16-track digital recorder, a Roland thing. I think it was a Roland thing.
Hmm.
I learned how to use that, and then just fast forward a couple more years, I started getting into doing the digital recording. I worked with Johnny Sandlin in the '90s. I worked with him, a band I had in Athens called Both Sides. We were lucky enough. Our lead singer had the resources that allowed us to record with Johnny Sandlin at his studio in Huntsville or Decatur, Alabama, and that was about a
Oh,
2-week process. It was really cool to work with him. If people don't know who that is, he was the engineer and producer for Live at the Fillmore East with the Allman Brothers, and did a lot of Greg Allman solo
Yeah.
stuff. Certainly a lot of accolades, a lot of gold and platinum records hanging around
Yeah.
his studio.
Yeah. Just those little
Yeah.
projects with those
And
unknown artists, right?
he was
Wow.
dealing with ADAT, which he had 3 ADAT machines, which was 24 tracks. So we did that, and I even he had the big mixing console, and he had he picked me to help him do our final mixes, like like timing when to turn the guitar up and how much to turn it up and back down and things like that. So he's on one side, I'm on the other of the console, and we're working the console to do these final mixes. That was definitely an eye opener, and I'm glad I had that experience. Of course, I don't use that technology here with modern technology, but it was cool
Mm-hmm.
to at least have the opportunity to do that once. But yeah, got into Pro Tools and stuff around 2014. I think my first project that went out was called the Wiseman Brothers. It was a 4-piece bluegrass
Yeah.
band. Then I did my mom's one of her albums called Heartache Hanging Round. And then I did our album, the one, and that we did. I did all 3 of
Yeah.
those albums at a different house with no studio, just a couple of bedrooms, and my rig, and we cut everything as live as we could, and then did overdubs and sort of cut my teeth on those 3 records. And then when we moved out of that house, we had a windfall of cash from selling the house, and we used a good portion of that to build my studio in the basement. So.
It's you get some great sounds, some great tones in that studio, and
Yeah,
it's just a good vibe in there. I think that plays a big part in it, and it allows everybody to just be in the room and be creative with each other. Yeah,
that was
it's been
definitely
really
the goal.
cool
If
to be
I
in
could
there.
change one thing about it, it would be to have more room to make that happen. So if you had a 6-piece band with a 3-piece horn section that they could do the same thing, that'd be the one thing that I would upgrade if I could. But yeah, as far as a 4 or 5-piece band, there's plenty of room. Uh, Plenty of it's nice and quiet down there, and like I say, we're far enough away from
Hmm.
the hustle and bustle that it's a good quiet environment.
Yeah. How would you say being an engineer and a producer has changed the way you play as a live guitar player? Do you approach it differently the more you've done that?
Probably, I don't think that I notice that I'm doing anything in particular, but I do know that when I'm working with bands, especially younger bands or artists, they'll come in with pretty much a finished idea in their head of what they want this song to be, but they're playing every part with their hands. They're playing the bass, they're playing the rhythm, they're playing the lead lines, they're doing everything on a piano or on a guitar or whatever. And having the studio and doing the albums that I've done, especially growing up in bluegrass where this is more uh, present than any other music in the world, if you ask me, is that everybody plays a
Hmm.
part. If you've got a band, you're doing a full project with a full band, drums, bass, guitars, piano, whatever. Everybody has a place in that, but you have to find that place and stick with it until it's your time to shine, and then everybody else is supporting you. So that's something I feel like I've learned and I do better at or hopefully am doing better at is knowing when and when not to stand out. Like find my part. Everybody's
Yeah.
a part of. In bluegrass, everybody plays the rhythm. Everybody is the rhythm. You got the
Hmm.
bass and the mandolin doing the
Yeah.
bass drum and the snare drum. Banjo and guitar are sort of the cymbals, and hi-hats. And if you get that thing going just right, it's as good as any drum beat out there, you know.
Absolutely. And I would say that good bluegrass bands, they
Yeah.
know how to mix themselves like they're their
Mhm.
own audio engineer on stage, where they control the dynamics of themselves and then the band, and that, you know, that's why they can
Mhm.
stand around one microphone and not need somebody to be all, you know,
Exactly.
mixing a bunch of different instruments. It's incredible. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, good, Mark. Well, listen, I thank you. We've talked for a long time. I could probably sit here for 2 more hours and just listen to you talk about all the cool stuff you've done. But for the folks that will listen to this, how can people go check out what you're doing and your studio? What's the
Well,
do you have a website
I
for the
do, and I
studio?
don't. I have a Facebook page for the studio, just at Flossy Monk Studio, and of course our band Across the Wide. What I would like to do, and I haven't done yet, is to figure out some way where I can have a good playlist. Well, it's pretty easy to do that. I'll make a playlist on Spotify with all the bands that I've had the fortune to work with here, and that way, you know, if people are interested to hear, you know, the difference that I make as an engineer or producer, maybe that'll stand out there. But no, I don't have a website for
Yeah,
that. Of course, the
absolutely.
band does, but unfortunately, I'm in charge of that. So it's I've been busy. Okay.
Yeah, you got a lot going on, man. You know,
Yeah,
fighting
that's
crime
it.
and recording records, and it's a lot. Well, Mark,
Man.
buddy, I love you. I appreciate your time today, and
All right.
we'll
Kiss
do
some
this
girls
again.
for me. All right. See
All
you.
right, buddy. Well, thanks for listening to the first episode of the Bandwidth Tapes. I'll be back soon with another episode. In the meantime, tell your friends about it, and I hope to see you soon.